welcome to Startup Grind Chilliwack. All right. Startup Grind is a global movement all about education, inspiration, and connection. And it's more than 500 to 600, I don't know exact number, chapters around the world in more than 130 countries. So it's pretty cool to be part of. Our values: make friends, give first, and help others. So that's what this is all about. It's about nurturing a startup community in Chilliwack and the Upper Fraser Valley. We've got some tremendous sponsors that have stepped up to sponsor this for 2019. We've got the Chilliwack Economic Partners, Accelerator, and University of the Fraser Valley. Let's hear it for our partners. Our partner level, we've got four companies involved: Cowork Chilliwack, Currency, Wisebox, and BC Urban Wine. And Accelerator is our sponsor showcase this evening. So I want to bring Colin Schmidt up. He's going to tell us a little bit about that and an exciting event coming up.
Thank you, Tim. All right, if you haven't heard the news already, we have our third annual Startup Hackathon this coming weekend. It's going to be a 24-hour event. To be clear, you're actually hacking away for 24 hours. From 5 p.m. on March 22nd, that's this Friday, which means you need to register today, maybe tomorrow at the latest, okay? It's only $10, get snacks and drinks included, and you're gonna have mentorship, education on how to start a tech company, how to validate your business. And then you're gonna be hacking away on this for that overnight. We're gonna play Halo at midnight to get the adrenaline running, and we're gonna have more mentorship in the morning, and then you're actually gonna give a business presentation and a demo of the tech you created in that 24 hours the following evening, or late afternoon, I should say, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. So two things: if you know anybody who would love to be part of this event, please do actually give them a nudge, push them in this direction. If you have a team, bring a team. If you don't, just bring your ideas and actually pitch each other at the beginning of the event, and actually you'll get assembled into teams of what you think are the best ideas. From there, we're actually going to have prize money. To be clear, there's like over $1,000 of prize money, plus $2,100 worth of value in 6 months of office space at the Downtown Business Center for the winning team, okay? So beyond that, there's mentorship for a year for the winning team and the running-up team. And the community as a whole puts a lot into this event. So please spread the word, make sure that everybody knows about it. And from there, I'll just say that Accelerator as a whole, of course, is a sponsor of this event. And they're basically a regional outfit that is trying to lead the community from a regional perspective, make sure Abbotsford, Mission, Chilliwack, even Maple Ridge and Langley are coming together to work on these events together. So we have a lot of support from UFV, from the Chilliwack Economic Partners, Accelerator, and this local tech community all making these events happen. So thank you, Tim, for running this event, Startup Grind Chilliwack. Really glad to be a sponsor here. Thank you all for coming out.
Great. Thank you. And quick tech note, if you mute this one. All right. So yeah, Colin's pretty humble. This is his third annual. This is a big deal. It's an amazing event. I'm a mentor in just a small piece of it. But they've launched 2 companies that are real and actively pursuing their dreams out of this. So it's really cool. One more big round of applause for what they're doing. And at 5 o'clock on Saturday, if you're not hacking away, you can come out and see these pitches. And it's happening at 3 o'clock. Yeah, come out and cheer these folks on. They'll be wearing out their caffeine by that point and need some audience participation. All right, if you are tweeting, Snapchatting, whatever you are, use Startup Grind hashtag. And without further ado, I want to introduce our guest for tonight, Amber Price. She's the owner of the Bookman. So let's give a big Startup Grind Chilliwack welcome. Come on up.
Hi, Tim. Thank you.
I'll put you in the hot seat.
The high seat.
Yes. Well, I think you've been studying the videos that have been produced to date to see what you're up against. So more so than any guest previously, I think. So.
Well, I have to say I do a lot of data entry at work, and during the day we'll often put our headphones in and listen to TED Talks, so it wasn't a very far cry from something like that. So
this is kind of a Startup Grind podcast thing going on.
Exactly.
Nice. Awesome. So if you roll way back, what's interesting is when I had a meeting with Amber and said, tell me your story. I knew this much of it. We all know the Bookman. We've all been there. We've all bought some used books. But there's so much more to it, and we're going to dig into it over the next hour here. And to help, Amber sent me this archive of photos and videos and stuff, so we're going to sprinkle some of that in. So first of all, I want to rewind to this photograph and talk about the origin story of both the Bookstore, which was not the Bookman at that point, it was the Book Nook.
That was the Book Nook back then.
And tell me about this situation.
So when I tell people that I literally grew up in the bookstore, I think this is a great photo for illustrating that, because I am a child in this photo. And I remember on Saturdays, after my dad purchased Erna's Book Nook, which we turned into the Book Nook, I would have to choose between doing my Saturday chores or going to the bookstore to help, and I would almost always choose the chores because the bookstore paid so badly. But, you know, throughout the years of just going on the weekends and then after school later on, the bookstore just became part of my blood. Books are in my blood. So I'll joke with new staff who say, "Oh, you're so fast at alphabetizing." I'm like, "Well, I've been doing this since I was 12. I better be fast." It's like breathing, right? So, yeah. So this is me, probably around age 13. I'm doing the Harlequin romances, which some of my staff here are like, "Ooh."
So where was the Book Nook?
The Book Nook was owned by a woman named Erna Ford. She started kind of like a bits and bobs store in 1963 in downtown, and that evolved into a bookstore. She found that books sold better than anything else, and she had Erna's Book Nook for a number of years, and when she decided to retire, it was very serendipitous. My dad had been working at the hospital as a nurse for 11 years on the children's ward, and they were replacing all of the practical nurses with registered nurses. So they wanted to repurpose him somewhere else in the hospital, and he was not interested. If he wasn't working with kids, he wasn't working at the hospital. Erna's Book Nook came up around the same time. He had always haunted used bookstores, so my mom and him made the leap, sold a couple of investment properties that they had, and bought the store.
And whereabouts in downtown?
This was down closer to where I think Ginseng Watches and Clocks is in our old building, if I'm remembering correctly. And then Elliott Clark Arts came up for sale some years into having the Book Nook. And by then, my dad had already decided to change the name of the store because everywhere he went, people would say, "It's the Bookman." He's like, that's got a good ring to it. Maybe I should rename
Okay, you're
the
jumping
store."
ahead. Let's
So
well, let's actually take a pause
Yeah.
and say, because you have not been stacking books all along. You went to
No.
school. You did some other
True,
things. So
true.
let's talk about
Okay.
that. Where did you go to high school?
So I started out in Abbotsford. I went to WJ Mowat for a stint there. And then I was invited to do an application for St. Michael's University's school over in Victoria. I got their scholarships, and I went there for a while. Great institution, beautiful city. But I decided to return home to Chilliwack for a short stint. And then I found out about a program in Whatcom called Running Start, where you accelerate through your grade 12 year and you go straight into college instead. And that worked really well for me. So I went to Whatcom Community College instead of grade 12.
So how were you able to go to the U.S. college? You have dual citizenship, I believe.
Yeah, my mom is from LA originally. My dad's from England. They met in the Yukon, of all places. So I enjoy
As they do.
As they do. And so I enjoy 3 citizenships, British,
Wow,
American, and Canadian. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me about school, because it was different, right? It wasn't your typical academics, and like, how did that all work?
Well, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't have a business degree. This is not what I was, put into school to do. It's something that I discovered. So I think for me, while academic achievement was within my grasp, it was something that I was good at, I didn't really enjoy school. So I did what I needed to do to graduate, and then went on to live life and travel and run the bookstore.
So you returned home. I've got
My dad!
a short video that we found. I think it's probably 5 or 6 years old, so some of the stats in it, but I think the genuine feeling of it. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Bookman, here we've got a video here.
The Bookman is a family-owned and operated used bookstore in the heart of downtown Chilliwack. We have a staff of 15, and we have 500,000 books carefully organized amongst our stacks.
We try to have things that no other bookstore has. I can give you one example. I picked up about 15 copies of a helicopter magazine. I had never ever seen a magazine on helicopters before. If someone comes in who is a helicopter fanatic, they are going to be amazed that we have it. And that's the whole fun of the bookstore, finding those things that people didn't know they were looking for until they see it.
I really like the part of my job that's come up in the last couple of years where we take the pictures of the book so that when you've got a customer who needs to find a book and say it's not exactly where it needs to be, you just look at our database and go, oh, well, this is what it looks like. I know it's got a yellow spine now, so you can find it. Like, there's a lot that I do that helps it make it a lot easier for everybody to find their book.
One of the things that brings me the most personal pride is the way that we treat our staff and our community at large. We have a mandate to treat everybody as we would want to be treated. That includes our environment, that includes the people that work here and the people that shop here. So we come from a place of gratitude and respect in the way that we approach business.
Well, we went out of our way from the very beginning to make sure the bookstore was really organized well, that it was well lit. We actually use full spectrum lighting because the colors on the books are truer. I've always tried to have the bookstore as clean as possible so that people don't come in and go, it smells like a used bookstore.
The store cat Nietzsche. Well, he's kind of more famous than the Bookman at this point. He's had multiple newspaper articles written about him. He's been featured in online blogs, and he was chosen as the poster bookstore cat for ABE Books a couple of years ago, which launched him into superstardom. He has released his own calendar. He does individualized bookmarks that he actually potographs individually for customers to raise money for worthy causes. And this past December, his calendar raised almost $3,000 for Safe Haven Animal Shelter.
People would say, oh, it's the Bookman. And we were actually one block further down the street, and the store was known at that time as the Book Nook. And we bought this building in 1993 and moved into it in 1994. And I said at the time, well, this is no longer a Book Nook. And because everyone had been calling me the Bookman, I thought, that's a very appropriate name.
And a shameless plug for Matt Hawkins, who's in the audience tonight.
Yes, for sure. So working with your dad, tell me some not the greatest stories.
Not the great, he wants the dirt. You guys want the dirt. My husband loves to say that the mantle of power must be taken. And I find that a very foreboding quote, but in a sense it's true. My dad and I have some fundamentally different philosophies about the bookstore. For example, he thinks it should be full of helicopter magazines. And I think there came a point where my dad doesn't believe in maximum capacity. He believes in bringing all of the books to us. And so I think one of my most memorable altercations with my father was when I'd hired a recycling truck to come to take away some of the extra books that we needed to get rid of. He was supposed to be in Vancouver. He came back early. And I remember the discussion that followed, and basically that was the moment where we had that discussion of, at some point, you're going to have to trust the decisions that I make at the bookstore and know that I'm making them with the success of the store in my heart. And I think he was ready to take away my keys before I, gave my Oscar Award speech. But at the end of it, things changed, and he started listening to my ideas in a new way, and I stopped having to ask for permission or do things secretly when he was out of town. I could do them openly for the most part. So that's one of my favorite memories, the recycling truck of doom.
So is your dad still actively involved in the business?
Yeah, I joke that he'll keel over in an aisle one day, which is British humor. My dad's British, so you're allowed to be morbid. But I don't think my dad has any concept of the idea of retirement because he's doing what he loves. And when you do what you love, there is no retirement. He is retired. He does exactly what he wants to. We've taken him completely off the schedule, so he'll be at the counter, you'll see him there eating pastries or having a coffee or going through a collection of books, and then you'll go around the corner, come back, and he's gone to buy helicopter magazines or whatever it is. So he'll disappear, he'll go scouting several days a week. He's in Abbotsford one day a week to look at the collections out there as well. But pretty much it's what he wants to do at this point, which he has very well earned after 29 years doing it. So.
So in that video, you mentioned 500,000 books. I imagine it's more now, or maybe less with the recycling trips.
Yeah. Carefully curated is how I put that. But yeah, it fluctuates up and down. We've got 2 branches. So we've got our baby store in Abbotsford with a smaller inventory, and then we've got the mothership in Chilliwack, and that's where most of our inventory is. And it's a special feat at the store for somebody to be able to walk in, ask for one book, and out of that, massive sea of books for a staff member to walk over, take it right off the shelf, and give it to them. It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
I think
fun.
I've got a picture of some of that, right?
These are our custom-built cabinets. These are something that we saw in a bookstore in Vancouver. They were not as well built as our cabinets. We had these custom-built, but the drawer system fascinated my dad. So every single time he would make any profit, he would sock it aside and build one of these cabinets. So this represents months and months and months of any squeezed out bits of money to build these cabinets to house the paperbacks, which are some of our best sellers in the store.
Talk to me about organization.
It's beyond the pale at the bookstore. We organize our organization. So everything is alphabetized, of course. We have chronological organization, we have numerological, we have sizeological. It's not an actual word, but we use the word size because it looks good when they're all the same. We don't do color blocking, that's not our thing. But so it will be alphabetized by author, and then it will be alphabetized by title within the author. So it makes it really, really easy for us to pull that book quickly, to know where the book that we're putting away goes. It's very black and white, our organization.
Talk to me about the tech side. I know you've been involved in creating some custom database software.
That was unexpected. I didn't think I would be developing software. I remember when I didn't have a computer in the store. We've got some older people, so you remember like the pew, that noise? So the days of internet where you had, I think, like 36 baud per second or something, I would carry the books home in a basket, and I would list them on the internet on my home computer, and I would bring them back and put them away. And eventually we got one computer, and we started databasing our requests in Excel spreadsheets. Not the most effective way of doing it, but it was a start. And the more that I thought about the bookstore, the more I realized we needed our own software. I'd looked at other software suites. They were okay, but they weren't replicating the way that we did business. So I realized we had to build our own. I found a developer on Craigslist. You can get everything on Craigslist. And we worked together for 10 years on that software package before he handed it off to another designer who I'm working with now, because we're always finding new ways of improving it. It manages our point-of-sale systems. It manages our customer requests. It has all of our database in it. It has a ton of information. I can tell you how many copies of Outlander by Diana Gabaldon we've ever had, how many we have in stock, which branch they're in. If I don't have one, I can add a request for you. If it comes in later in the day, we'll telephone you. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
And we've gone from that one little computer to 8 computers in Chilliwack now, I think. I'm like verifying with staff. I think there's 8. We've got a massive server room. We've got a server room in Abbotsford. Everything is updated every 15 seconds between branches. It's created tons of data entry jobs, an internet sales department.
You mentioned early on the dial-up modem and so forth, and internet sales were a big thing for quite a while. Can you tell me about that?
I remember my first really expensive book that I sold. I almost got into an argument with the customer because I was like, are you sure that you want to buy this? It's a lot of money. He's like, I just want to buy the book if that's okay. And I remember the first book that I sold, I just ran to the post office because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't even have envelopes. I was just like, what do I do? They're like, well, you need an address, and then we'll weigh it and we'll mail it. And I was like, okay, I'll be back. And that, evolved into us pushing this huge trolley down the street. And I imagine like everybody in the lineup behind us must have just been like, oh, and then I found out how to automate it, and now we drive our packages across the border. We pre-print all of our postage. It all goes through USPS with the exception of a few Canadian and international packages through Canada Post. I would say in the heyday, we were mailing a few hundred books a week, and now we still mail a couple hundred a week, which I think is a great little sideline for the business.
So what has Amazon done in that realm? Because where were you listing these books originally?
Originally, we started with a company based in Victoria called Advanced Book Exchange. They're still in operation, and I think they are the most professional online selling platform. They usually have about 20,000 booksellers selling books at any given time. So that's where we started, and we're still with them. It's been 20 years that we've been selling with them. That's a long time. We also sell with Biblio and Alibris, which are more kind of like librarian-based selling sites. We sell on Amazon.com, and we also sell on Amazon.ca. It's like having a lot of fishing lines, and I just have the one book.
Right. And which one, is there a standout that performs better than others, or is it sort of equal?
Yeah, I would say that during the heyday, Amazon was definitely, like, the glory days of Amazon were insane. Like, we literally put our database up, and all of our staff were just running to fill the orders because they were coming in so fast we couldn't even keep up with it. More people sell online, so the marketplace and the pricing has changed considerably, but Amazon and ABE are the two strongest sites by a mile.
So you mentioned the heyday. What happened?
I think the more that people realized that there was a marketplace for books, the more people started listing huge warehouses full of books instead of just mom and pop shops. So it just changes the nature of the game a bit.
Mm-hmm. How did that impact your business? Because you've continued to grow.
Yeah.
Like at one point, and I know there was a fundamental shift in even your online presence. Tell me about that.
It's funny. I really had to think about what I wanted to put my energy into. And it's fun to mail books to customers that are outside of our community, but it's a lot more fun to do business with people like you that I can see and talk to and joke with and introduce the cat to and, give a scholarship to your kids at the high school. There's a lot of ways to connect in your community that you just don't get when you mail a copy of 1984 to Kentucky. And they never come back to you, which could actually be a good thing that the books don't come back, because they do come back. But when you send a book out, it's just gone. And if I sold it to Stephanie, she could bring it back for trading credit in a couple of weeks, and then I could sell it to Sarah. Well, not Sarah, would just borrow it probably, but yeah, the idea that they move around more. So I decided to step away from selling on a local website, which had been successful for us, and just go back to bricks and mortar. And for about a month, I had a lot of people on the telephone being like, well, why don't you have your books online anymore? It's so much nicer just to be able to look it up. And I'd say, but then you don't get to talk to us, and you don't get to come down to our store, so you should come down and visit us and have a browse. Or I don't have that particular title, let me put a request in, but I do have an awesome vegan cooking section, you should come down and browse. And I found that sales went up, which is really weird. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a question.
Okay. We'll come back to it.
We'll get this in post.
Yeah, I'll just go way ahead and you can pull me back.
So that idea of shifting from, like, you're still doing internet sales and so forth, like, has that fundamentally, you said you continued to grow. At what point did you bring in the Abbotsford store?
So I don't know how many people in this room have an e-reader, but I'm watching for you. So when e-readers kind of became in vogue, it was a really scary time for independent booksellers, because you were losing a market share to something that you didn't even know how to compete with. You never even had to think of that as being a threat. If you were doing a SWOT analysis, you wouldn't be like, space books are coming. And so I would wake up, like from a sleep, I would wake up sweating. Like I was nervous about, the livelihood of my staff, who I love dearly, and I would do anything to protect their jobs. I was worried about my long-term future, that given that I'd put so much time and energy into building this business. And I was studying yoga with a woman from India 3 days a week out in Vancouver named Maitreyi. She's amazing. And we were doing this pranayama, which is the conscious expansion of energy through breath work. So I was thinking a lot about, expansion, and I read a book called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Again, shoot for the moon kind of thinking. And I thought, well, if I'm going to lose, say, 3 or 4 out of every 10 customers to ebooks, let's make this the worst case scenario, I better go find some more. So I thought, if I open up in Abbotsford and I find 7 new customers, then not only have I come out okay, I've come out ahead. So I did that.
Wow. Was it a
Yeah.
slow build? Was it like down and then up? Was it kind of immediate?
I thought that our first year of growth, we were open for a calendar year. In my second year, we were seeing like 27, 28% growth. I thought that was pretty good. We hired more staff. We went from just me, behind the counter nervously awaiting people coming through the door, hi, to another person, to me not needing to be there at all. Now we have 3 full-time people, 3 part-time people. I just hired another person part-time, and our first quarter, we're up 67% in Abbotsford this year.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So the question I was going to ask you came back.
Oh, good. Here we are.
I'm curious, without divulging too much of the inner workings, but what is the actual business model of a used bookstore? Like, where does the inventory come from? Are you buying and selling that? Like, how does it work?
So we have independent scouts who bring books in. They go out as a hobby and they find books and they bring them to us. We've got a few who are amazing at it. Pretty much they bring us a box of books. We buy the box of books. We have people who are watching Marie Kondo these days. So we're getting a lot of clean out from people who are decluttering, spring cleans, children growing out of an age bracket of books. They'll bring them in. Unfortunately, estate sales are a great place for books to come from. And then you've got my dad, who's just a relentless book-eating machine. So he goes out and does garage sales, estate sales, private house calls, thrift stores, goes around and does that. And then, of course, we've got our customer base who are always bringing books back for trade that belong to us initially. So, and I tag every one of our labels, our custom labels, with "Bring Me Back for Trading Credit." So if you've never heard of us, you can find us and bring the book back.
Okay, cool. Your dad alluded to it, but this notion of the care and attention and not smelling like a used bookstore permeates everything you do. Like,
Yeah.
can you talk about that as a company culture and the things you're doing?
I really believe that the devil's in the details, and I say that we deal in minutia. The smaller something is, probably the more important it is. And if you're not taking care of those tiny pieces, you can forget about the big ones. This is a mural that I created with an amazing art director out in Vancouver named Richard. And we worked with an illustrator in North Vancouver, just one that he happened to know. I had the concept. I really wanted these books to reflect the way that books make you feel. So you've got your childhood favorite, or the one that makes you cry every time you read it. And so rather than have titles, which was a copyright nightmare, P.S., we went with this kind of philosophical concept of the way that books touch lives. Applied for a grant through the local BIA for facade improvement and had this mural put up. And interestingly, this is a vinyl overlay, so we can take that off and change that mural over time if we come up with a new concept or a new design, which I liked the freedom to do. Yeah, these little details, I think, are what build an extraordinary business. And this is beautiful for everybody who walks by, and I'm starting to see it pop up on Instagram, so selfie.
Well, and that dovetails with, like, you are a champion of downtown Chilliwack.
I love the
And it's had
downtown.
its ups and downs, and it seems to be on a real upswing right now, which is pretty cool. Tell me about your relationship with downtown Chilliwack.
I love downtown. I chose to live on the downtown side when I moved here full-time 10 years ago. I had lived on the Sarda side, did a short stint in Abbotsford, and then consciously made the decision to move downtown because I wanted to make it better by living there. And I think that the more healthy, awesome people that you have in the downtown, the more healthy and awesome the downtown will be. So I choose to shop downtown. I choose to go out for food downtown. When I do my Christmas shopping, I literally drive in a circle in 5 minutes and I'm done. When I get ready for a gala, I'll go get my shoes, my hosiery, my dress, my jewelry, all downtown, and I'm done. It's amazing how when you think about your downtown core that it really has almost everything that you need. So I know all my neighbors. It's pretty cool. I love the downtown.
So next topic, cats.
Oh, Nietzsche.
And this cat in particular.
I love Nietzsche Bear. He just had a big win this last week. There's an illustrator in the States named Jane Mount. She has this whole brand called Ideal Bookshelf. And you can take your favorite bookshelf and take a picture of it, and she will make you original art of your bookshelf. And she's been so successful in this endeavor that she's turned it into books. And in her last book of her collection of all of these interesting bookshelves of celebrities and people who have hired her, she did a Bookstore Cats page, and she featured Nietzsche. So not only is he in the interior of this gorgeous hardbound book, but she did a flexi journal as well. So he's on the front cover journal, and every 4 or 5 pages, it's his cute, furry little face in the corner. And I was like accosting customers, look at this. But he is such a photogenic cat. He's almost comatose most of the time. He's quite elderly, so he's a good subject because he doesn't move very fast. So he's been on book bags. He has been in, I think, 7 or maybe 8 years of calendars for fundraising. With Ina's Community Cats, those calendars have raised over $20,000. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where did that idea come from?
He is adopted. He is a rescue cat from Ina Vimeris, who used to run Safe Haven, that she founded that many years ago. And when she branched off from the Safe Haven, I offered to do all of the kind of brainy back-end stuff for her new organization. So I built her brand, and I helped her get her charitable status, and just all of those like business cards, address labels, thank you cards, the things that you need to be able to run your business. She's not good at, but I have skills there. So I did that for her, and she needed money to fix cats, so it was a little match made in heaven, I guess. Yeah.
That's awesome.
She's a cool lady.
You touched on this already, but that's a picture of your Abbotsford branch.
That's our Abbey branch. There's a lot less pillows hanging from the ceiling than there are now. There's a lot more pillows now. The Abbotsford branch is 1,600 square feet, whereas Chilliwack is 5,000. So it's a baby store, much smaller, with about, I don't even know, an 1/8 of the inventory, a 1/10 of the inventory. It's much tinier. But it's a good snapshot. I call it a window display of our books because it constantly changes over. It's the best and brightest of our collection.
So that's 2. Are there plans? Is this scalable? Like going from 1 to 2?
Yeah.
Like I've always said, we've got 2 kids. Beyond that, you're outnumbered and you're done, right?
Only if they figure it out.
Yeah. That and having the control of the iPad password, right?
Oh, true.
Yeah, beyond that, you're
Wi-Fi's down, guys.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to open more, but I also am a firm believer that you should only take on as much as you know that you can handle with excellence. So until I feel ready to level up in life one more time and do it again, I'm going to chill out where I am. We've talked about doing some improvements to the Chilliwack store, expanding our children's section. So we're brainstorming about that right now and looking at what that might be. But I would like Langley or Maple Ridge at some point.
Mm-hmm. And you own the Chilliwack store.
Yeah.
Are you leasing Abbotsford?
Yeah, we lease in Abbotsford. I looked at purchasing. The prices out there are a lot higher than they are in Chilliwack. And what I looked at was I willing to live above and work below? Because then I could swing that, no problem. But I didn't want to leave Chilliwack, so we'll rent for now.
So these people are keeping score. Okay, she's running 2 stores. She's got a huge staff. She's helping people launch brands. And another thing that was a real amazing story was this idea of bringing Syrian refugees to Chilliwack. So tell me about that.
So I opted out of kind of large media news when I was 19. I suffered from depression all through my teenage years. I'm just too sensitive for world events. I felt overwhelmed and helpless. It just wasn't my bag. So I hadn't really, watched news or read major newspapers for a really long time. And then I married my husband, who all he does is read newspapers and watch world news. So he talked a lot about the crisis that was happening in Syria. And the more he talked, the more upset I got. And I'm somebody that when something hurts my heart or my soul, I have to do something. Doesn't matter what, I have to do something. And I said to him, what if we moved a Syrian family into our house? How would you feel about that? And he's like, I feel great about that. So we talked about where they would go and how we would set the house up, and I started doing research, and then I found out you needed like tens of thousands of dollars to sponsor a refugee family, and so I thought, well, geez, gonna have to solve that problem. So I went online on my Facebook page, and I reached out to my friend group, and I asked, would you give me $100 a month for the next year? Can I get, 10, 15, 20 people who will do this, and as a group, we can bring someone? And my friend Dara said, I know how to fundraise. Come over to my house for dinner and we'll talk about it. So I went to Darius's house. She ordered a pizza. She invited a couple of cool friends. We talked about it. By the end of the night, we'd come up with our name, Reach, for Refugees in Chilliwack. We'd registered our Facebook page, made us all admins. We opened our charitable bank account the next week with Envision, had our logo designed, and we were off and running. I think it took us 8 weeks to fundraise $40,000.
Wow.
And my favorite fundraising story, I still have the little note up on my corkboard by my desk. It was a bag of nickels from a little boy named Ben Dodds. Whoever your parents are, Ben Dodds, I love you. And it just says, this is for the Syrian refugees from Ben Dodds. In his little, it was probably his whole piggy bank. So I had people walk in and just give me checks for $500. My family came here as refugees. You should be able to bring a family too.
Wow.
It was pretty awesome.
And I think, is that your organizing group? Is that right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is our group of 5, and lovely Louie in the back at Bravo. So we have Julia Dodge in the front, Alicia Sabarin, Darius Lapointe, Debbie Lapointe, and myself. And from the last slide, when we were doing our work on Facebook, somebody left a super racist comment about how they didn't want their children going to school with these people. And so that Snowflakes for Syria picture that you saw was an initiative that we did with the schools to start the conversation about refugees and the Syrians. And they handmade all those snowflakes, and then we put them in businesses, and they sold them for, I think, $2 each to put in their window. So
Wow.
cool opportunities to connect, right?
So tell me about the family.
The Zanta family has been here for, I want to say, 3 years now. Safu drives truck. He got his trucking license. His wife Hasna does cleaning and raises their 2 boys. Everybody's fluent in English. They've got a home in Sardis that they love and they take wonderful care of. They've got friends, and I think they're working on bringing some more family over. I'm due to go over for coffee again on Sunday to hang out in wake of what just happened in New Zealand. I thought it was important to reach out and connect. So,
That seems pretty straightforward, but it must have been difficult. What were some of the difficulties in doing this?
I think paperwork is probably the most daunting part of bringing a family here. I have to say that it's shockingly easy. I think once the money was in place, all you needed to do was a whole lot of paperwork. And that was after they came too, a whole lot of paperwork. I think one of the more meaningful exchanges we had was when we had a translator with our family for the first time, and we were able to have the conversations, the nuanced conversations that we couldn't have with Google Translate and drawing pictures. We got to hear their story of how they escaped Syria and got to Turkey in the trunk of a car in exchange for their wedding ring. And last time I was over visiting, Hasna showed me her new wedding ring that she had just gotten. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Gonna get all sappy. Yeah, it feels good when something makes you feel powerless and helpless. It feels good to do something. It doesn't have to be $40,000 and a whole family, but it feels good to do something.
And how was the family identified? Like, how did you connect with this family?
We went through MCC for recommendations out in Abbotsford, and so they had some pre-selected families. We were really clear on the fact that we wanted there to be more than one generation, like we wanted there to be children. So that was a parameter that we set out as a group to bring people who would have their lives changed forever, not just parents. So.
Wow. Yeah. So speaking of parents, perfect segue. You're now a...
I'm just protecting his anonymity. It's
Yes.
fine. That's my son, Julian Henry Price.
Actually, that, to be totally morbid, that's pretty much what you described your
With
father.
my dad, this is probably like in his will and like some sort of weird codicil, must have book over face.
Yeah.
But no, Julian from infancy, of course, has been surrounded by more books than any child should reasonably have. I don't know if you can spoil a child with books, but my child is spoiled. This is pretty common. He loves to take books to bed with him and read, and I think he's about maybe 2 in this picture, so this is the tiger who came to tea. He fell asleep during a good read. So cute.
So talk about balance. How are you doing this and working and running a business and doing all your other things?
Well, I think any mom in here knows that you don't do it by yourself, that's for sure. I have an amazing, amazing daycare provider named Leslie, who I call Julian's real mom. He goes there 5 days a week. He goes to Montessori preschool. And last year I made the decision to ask my parents to move in with us so that we can look after them as they grow older. So he's got Nana and Papa around as well, which is really lovely for him. The first year after I had him, I apologized to all the people I was working with because I was insane. You're not sleeping. So I think that was probably the most challenging year, was learning how to keep a human alive and also keep the 2 bookstores alive and take good care of my staff. And it was a hard time. I don't ask for help easily. I like to get things done myself. I find it quicker a lot of the time to just do things myself. And I had to learn humility and how to ask for help from other people, which was huge for me.
In managing staff, like you mentioned, you've got 25 staff now.
26 now.
26
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
How did you learn to do that?
My dad has always taught me that at the end of every working day, it's important to thank people for the work that they've done. And it's something really simple, and it's something that I do, but I think that that schooled me on the fact that without my staff, we don't have a business. So gratitude, respect, loyalty, I fight for their jobs, I fight for fair wages, medical benefits, dental benefits. Treating them with the respect that I want them to treat my customers with is huge. I can't expect them to be great at their job if they don't feel well taken care of and happy. So trying to hit those pointers, and most of the time I succeed. I've learned a lot from the times that I haven't succeeded as well. So,
And you've been recognized by the community,
Yeah.
especially the Chamber of Commerce.
yeah.
Last year, you were nominated for a Stan Rogers Legacy Award. And this year, you guys were Business of the Year.
Yeah, we won Business of the Year, which was shocking. I did not anticipate that at all because this picture is from 2 years ago where we also won Business of the Year. So I felt a little, I don't know.
Well, being in your category, I felt it too.
You should have hired me when you had the
I know.
chance, Tim.
Yeah, she reminded me that she interviewed to work for me way back when
When
and
I was
somehow I
20.
had blanked that out of my memory.
I had this like super serious talk with my dad. There's this really progressive company with this super cool guy, and I think I want to try out to be his office manager, Dad. And if I get the job, it means I won't be at the bookstore anymore.
Well, I'm
And
glad I didn't hire you.
You had this like glass table, and I just remember taking my hands away, and there was just like these foggy, wet, soggy prints, and I'm like, I am not getting this job.
Well, we've been going for about 40 minutes. I want to get into some Q&A, but first, I want to talk about some of your internet marketing, viral video
Oh, sure,
activity,
yeah,
and
sure.
specifically all about them books, which was a manifestation of your disdain for e-readers.
Well, let's say that it's a tongue-in-cheek poke at e-readers.
Fair enough.
Because as much as I see their practicality for travel, or I don't see their practicality, who am I kidding? I just bring a big backpack full of books and then get rid of them as I'm finished. But no, it's a tongue-in-cheek poke at e-readers. I think to relieve some of the tension, a lot of independent sellers went through real stress from them. I remember asking my mom if I could do this really dramatic window display, like, what do you think? I'm just gonna put a Kindle in the middle and then throw some garbage around. She said no. So after Abbotsford had done well and I felt emotionally prepared, we took on All About Them books. And I love this video because I feel like it's a great reminder that you've got untapped potential in your staff that you might not even know about. With Emily, it's kind of obvious. She's amazing with theater. Her best friend, Pauline, is an incredible choreographer. Matt Hawkins did our video work. He's impeccable. And together with a bunch of staff and friends, we made this crazy video.
Well, let's play it. Before that, Aiden, the last video was cutting in and out, and I think the audio jack into the computer might be slightly loose, so just give that a... There you go.
Troubleshoot.
We'll cut this out. We'll fix it all in the video. So let's play it.
Because you know I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, books. Yeah, it's pretty clear, the book is tried and true, and I can read it like I'm supposed to do. Book's got the plot twist that all readers chase, and all the right words and all the right places. I see the e-readers working that shiny screen. We know that just ain't healthy. Headaches will make you scream. If you got bookies, just raise them up, 'cause every page of them is perfect from the cover to the back. Yeah, my mama, she told me don't worry about the size or the genre or binding of books that you read at night. You know I won't be no book hating, brain draining Barbie doll. So if that's what you're into, then go ahead and move along. Because you know I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books. I'm bringing bookies back. Go ahead and read a good book with a snack. And if you think that you just can't read that, I'm here to tell you that this book right here is perfect from the cover to the back. Yeah, my mama, she told me don't worry about the size or the genre or binding of books that you read at night. You know I won't be no book hating, brain draining Barbie doll. So if that's what you're into, then go ahead and move along. Because you know I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, because you know I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, because you know I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no Kindle. I'm all about them books, no.
So before we get into Q&A, I just want to talk about the business relevance of doing a video and what comes out of that, because some people will say, why should I do a video? Like, clearly you may have a friend in Matt Hawkins, but something like that can be costly in time, energy, money. Like,
He's worth it.
yeah.
No, but seriously, I like to talk about guerrilla marketing in the fact that it might not be conventional marketing, but it has a huge spin-off. And I think it's even better if it comes from an altruistic place or a place of fun where you don't really have some huge site. You're just doing it because it's hilarious and fun. I think that when you do something genuine, it ripples out and people pay attention to it. The highlight of that for me, beyond it going viral, making the cover of both newspapers at the same time, which was cool. It's like, oh, this is the same. Oh my gosh, that's both of them. Global TV called, Huffington Post covered it. It was being tweeted and retweeted and sent back to people that were in Chilliwack. And then Margaret Atwood tweeted about us. That was pretty cool. We were just screaming in the office. So I think there's a lot of spin-off that can come from something like that that you don't anticipate. Yeah.
And I believe it's got like 250,000 views,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And probably a lot of positive feedback and sharing and all that stuff. So
Tons,
well done.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
So that's enough for me. We've got some time for some Q&A. Michael will run the mic around. And we'll get you to do it into the microphone so we can capture the audio.
Hello. Hi. So Amber, the last few times I've been in, I've noticed there's been a lot more gift type of gift stuff at your store. What's the plan? Are you sort of moving more towards gift items, or what's that?
So I think it all started with Harry Potter. I brought in 6 Harry Potter bracelets, and they were gone the same day, mostly to staff, because we're all insane. But then I did it again, and they went again. So I brought in a couple more Harry Potter things, and then they went as well. And I found the more time that I spent rabbit holing and finding cool merchandise, the more that people responded to it. And so I thought to myself, like, I'm gonna have to start setting some boundaries, otherwise we're just gonna start selling, you know, socks. Hey, wait, we sell socks. And I thought to myself, I wanna have parameters that keep it within a certain radius. So I've got my Harry Potter gear. I've got what I refer to as geek chic. This would be superhero gear, Star Wars stuff, Star Trek, Stranger Things, all those kind of like cult classics like Nightmare Before Christmas, where you really resonate with those things, and it's almost bookish in the kind of geek factor of how much you love it. We've got that stuff, and then we introduced literary pillows, which literally is just a second store that is on the ceiling. They're all hanging from the ceiling. That's what I saw when I have a lot of creative ideas in my shower. So I was in my shower, and I was like, I could just fill the whole ceiling with pillows.
That's
And
like
so I
another
did it.
5,000 square feet.
Yeah. And I was like, this is my pillow store. And,
Can I put desks on the ceiling for the co-work space?
just come down. And then we got into enamel pins, which again plays into that geek chic, like very hobby-oriented thing. And I just checked my sales on those pins, and I just crossed 3,000 sold since, a little while ago, which is a great sideline. And anytime that the business does better, it enables me to make further improvements to my store, to pay my staff more fairly, to do more things in my community. We had a really good Christmas season, so we paid that forward to Central Elementary with an activity hallway, which is going to be installed in the next couple of weeks. So when you do well, give it away. Bad capitalism. Advice from Amber.
So you spoke about developing your own software years ago, specifically for how you guys operated. Have you ever looked at taking that software and selling that as a business?
Yeah.
Or as a product?
Tim asked me the same question, actually, and it is something that I spoke with about with my software developer as well. And I decided that I didn't want to get into that side of business, nor did I want to provide tech support for people, which you're going to have to do if you're implementing it. And being me, I would want to like go down to whatever bookstore bought it and like tell them how to use it and like train them. Like I'm just not relaxed enough maybe to share it. It's also the culmination of 29 years of combined experience of my dad and I. So I think the software really is a replication of our brain, and that's something that's really integral to our business. And I don't necessarily know that I want to give all that away. Maybe I'm a little schmaugy about it. My treasure. But yeah.
There's some software developers in the audience going, they see an opportunity.
Yeah, they're like, come on, give it to me.
Just to follow on from that, what was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome from taking your paper-based system and digitizing it?
It was interesting. We never really thought we were going to database the store. That wasn't the start of it. The start of it was just getting our books on the internet to sell. But as I listed more and more of what we consider to be our valuable books, I thought, oh, I'll just list this aisle too, and then I'll list this aisle. And pretty soon we were listing half the store, and then we did the other store. And we got this incredible database of books, which we didn't anticipate doing. And that led to barcoding. So I've lost sight of your question. I'm on a rant now. The biggest challenge. I think labels was one of my biggest challenges. We used to put Post-it notes inside of all the books, and moving to labels, finding a manufacturer that would get my glue just right with my barcode and all of my information on there just right. It took me a year and a half. The rest of the software seemed to just come because I'd be like, replicate this part of my brain into the software. I want it to do this. And my coder was great. He would do it. But getting those labels perfect was half of it, I would say. It's crazy how much of a difference they've made. I think I drove my label manufacturer completely crazy. I was like Goldilocks, just a bit too sticky. Just not enough sticky. Just a bit too sticky. But I don't want to damage the books. They're precious. We're stewards of them, and we only have them for so long, and then they're going to go on to their next life. And I don't want, you to rip off a label and take the cover with it. So it's important to get that balance right.
I'll be nice.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Matt.
Your most unique book you found in all of your digging around?
Well, we did have a book on how to start a cult that was really weird. We all looked through that one. I have a book from the 16th century that has occult spells in it, and I remember opening it up, and the typography is so old that the S's aren't S's, they look like F's. They didn't have an S yet. And the spell that I turned to was how to black out the sun, and I closed the book, wrapped it in bubble wrap, and it's in a special spot, because I was like, that's more than I need to know. But I would say our coolest sales that we've ever had were a true first edition of I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. That went for a few $1,000s to a private collector down in the States who has a temperature and humidity controlled library. It was incredible. It was published by Gnome Press. He was an unknown author. It was an unknown book long before movies were made, and he had the popularity that he did. Asimov wrote over 500 books, and that was his quintessential work. So to have a first edition and be able to have that in your possession for a short period of time is a privilege that not a lot of people get. We also had books come to us from Dr. Charles Muse's estate when he passed away, and one of them was a 2 or 3 volume set of an oversized book bound in orange cloth. And it was one of 2 sets in the entire world. The other one was owned by the University of Cairo, and it was all of the panels from the inside of the Giza pyramid, every single panel. And we sold that to, I believe, a university for a few $1,000s as well, and we used that to help the person who figured out how to get these expensive books online. I remember when that sold, we used half of the money to help her buy her car, so, yeah.
Wow. Do you ever have inklings of being a collector and not letting this stuff go?
I thought about that this year because we bought this new house and my parents live in with us, and it's quite spacious and has lots of room for art and books, which is important in our household. And I was like, we should really keep all the cool folios and old leather-bound books and like line all the walls like those libraries you see in the back of the Jane Austen scenes. It'd be so. And then I was like, why? We don't need them. Like, they pass through us to the next owner. We're just there to connect them, be it with somebody here in town or person in Kentucky who seems to be getting all my books. I don't know why I'm focusing on Kentucky. California buys more books. But when
He could be the first purchaser of your software.
Well, there you We gotta talk. But yeah, it's a short relationship, but a meaningful one. And some books hang around for a really long time. I sold a book over this past weekend to a woman. It's a local history book, and she was able to tell me which pages to flip to find her grandma and her mom. And we had that book since 2002, I think it said inside. And the fact that that sat in our back room waiting for her to call, it's such a strange thing that destiny brought her to us. She doesn't even own a computer. A friend found it for her, got her phone number for our store. She called us and we set that up, and away it goes, off to her in Alberta. So.
Wow. Got time for one more question.
Well, you've clearly shown a lot of resilience in your industry, which is incredibly impressive. I own a couple of brick and mortar retail stores as well.
Cool.
I'm really curious if you have already developed a strategy or what your general approach will be when times aren't so good, when that recession does hit eventually. I'm really curious how you are anticipating handling a situation like that.
Well, I think the used book market is a very strange one, because typically when times get worse and people are spending less money, they buy used things. So I think the way that we've developed our business to include new items and new books that are more expensive has bolstered our business during good times when people have lots of disposable income. We have that bizarre and very unique padding of offering items for half cost with trading credit or free if you've got, trading credit and you bring books in that we buy for cash. So it becomes this kind of discounted economy where we're recession-proof, which is an odd thing for a bookstore that I don't think a lot of other businesses would be able to take advantage of. But I think for me, what I learned when I opened the Abbotsford store is that shrinking and reacting in fear is not necessarily the best choice for me. For me, it's about thinking bigger, thinking differently, and that's something I know I admire about Tim, is that this is another incarnation of his business. This business looks entirely different than the one that I applied to 20 years ago, and it's the coolest version of itself that it's been. So I feel like when you're a solution-based thinker, when you see a problem and immediately start solving it, it's the mindset more than having a plan in place.
Awesome. And to end, I have a video that defies explanation, so I'm just going to hit play.
Book. Cat.
I wrangled all these
Book.
cats. These are my customers' cats.
Cat. Book. Cat. Book. Cat. Book. Cat. Book. Cat. Books. Cats. Books. Cats. Books. Cats. Books. Pile of books. Cats. Books. Cats. Books. Cats. Books. Cats. Books. Leather 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 pile of books. Cats. Books. Cats. Books. Cats.
Catchy,
Books.
right?
Cats. Leather books. Cats. Books. Cats. Leather. 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 Leather pile of tea. 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 Tea.
Oh, yeah.
Cats. Books. 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 Cats. Books.
I was so hairy by the time that was over.
Well, thanks so much. That was awesome.
Thank you so
That's
much.
Startup Grind Chilliwack. Thanks so much for coming. We've got a small but mighty team organizing everything. There's myself, Colin, and Michael, who are curating speakers and putting this together. And my son, Aiden, is doing the tech, which is awesome. Another child labor story.
It turns out in the end.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yes, and we've got 2 upcoming speakers that are already locked in. Next month is Mary Jane Mellenbacher. She's from Vancouver and has developed a really interesting app and turned her sales expertise into a business. So it's really interesting. And then in May, we've got Jared Falk. He runs a company called Missouri Media, probably more known by one of their brands, which is Drumeo. And they're an online drumming school based out of Abbotsford with 30 full-time employees and more than 500 million views on YouTube of their courses. It's unbelievable. So do come back. We're going to have different stories from bricks and mortar retail to all sorts of things. And it's all about building this community. There is cookies, and there's more time for mingling and getting to know one another. So if you were huddled in your group of people that you know, introduce yourself to somebody else. Chances are I'll be hiding back here in the dark, but do follow my advice. So, Startup Grind. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Tim.